These orange vests who are out on the streets now in Melbourne going up against the police, going up against the union that's mandating them to get this jab, they face fines of $11,000 merely for engaging in any form of protest. That's how bad it's become. In fact, even posting about an anti-lockdown protest online can not only get you a massive fine, it can get you a home visit from the police. We saw that with the pregnant woman who was arrested, handcuffed in front of her children, and that was 6 months ago. It's only gotten worse since. Of course, Dr. Kerry Chant, the New South Wales public health official, coming out and saying, don't talk to your friends, don't talk to your neighbours, don't post about it online, don't complain about it. Well, they're not only complaining about it, they're out en masse on the streets, rebelling. It's a new rise of a new movement, the Orange Vest movement, and it's fantastic to see. That's going on in Australia. Finally, people are tired of being told by their esteemed health authorities not to talk to their friends and neighbours. They're tired of seeing joggers in parks arrested, thrown to the ground as they have cardiac arrests for not wearing a mask. They're sick to the back teeth of women, old women being arrested for sitting on park benches. They're sick to the back teeth of people being told to get off a beach because they're not wearing a mask while they're sat on the beach, or they don't wear a mask from the walk to the beach to the bar, because that's, of course, when we know COVID is prone to strike most. Just like when you go into a restaurant, the virus takes a break when you sit down at the table to have a drink, but it's particularly potent in the 10-yard walk from the door of the restaurant to the table itself. Makes perfect sense. I'm sure you'll agree. We're going to get into that shortly, though, because I did a report on Australia a few hours ago. Let me know when we have that video ready. But there was a big article that came out in the Telegraph just about an hour ago. The headline is, Wuhan scientists plan to release coronaviruses into bat caves 18 months before the outbreak. And recall that the horseshoe bat that they claim this coronavirus originated in was not located in the Wuhan wet market. In fact, the nearest bats, which they claimed were naturally infected with this virus, were 400 miles away. What wasn't 400 miles away from the source of the infection was the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But remember, we weren't allowed to talk about that, or we'd be banned off social media and called dangerous conspiracy theorists for the best part of a year. As Peter Daszak, one of the prime engineers of this gain of function research in Wuhan, wrote emails to Dr. Anthony Fauci thanking him for not allowing that dangerous conspiracy theory to circulate, as he was literally put over the board of Facebook's fact-checking department on the coronavirus, deciding what people can and can't say about it. So Wuhan scientists plan to release coronaviruses into cave bats 18 months before the outbreak. Remember, the first confirmed case, although they later covered this up, of somebody falling sick from the coronavirus was a lab worker in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Just another coincidence. Wuhan scientists were planning to release enhanced airborne coronaviruses into Chinese bat populations to inoculate them against diseases that could jump to humans, leaked grant proposals dating from 2018 show. And again, remember, these caves where the nearest bats came from were the source of the coronavirus, we're told, were 400 miles away from Wuhan itself. New documents show that just 18 months before the first COVID-19 cases appeared, researchers had submitted plans to release skin-penetrating nanoparticles containing novel chimeric spike proteins of bat coronaviruses into cave bats in Yunnan, China. It says they also plan to create chimeric viruses genetically enhanced to infect humans more easily. Remember, this was a dangerous conspiracy theory just 6 months ago, and requested $14 million from DARPA to fund the work. And even DARPA came back and said, no, this is ridiculous, it's deadly, it's dangerous, we're not going to fund it. Even the deep state said it was too dangerous. Papers confirmed as genuine by a former member of the Trump administration show they were hoping to introduce human-specific cleavage sites to bat coronaviruses, which would make it easier for the virus to enter human cells. But again, they were trying to prevent that by making it happen. When COVID-19 was first genetically sequenced, scientists were puzzled about how the virus had evolved such a human-specific adaptation at the cleavage site on the spike protein, which is the reason it's so infectious. Documents were released by Drastic, the web-based investigations team set up by scientists from across the world. So this is from the esteemed scientists themselves. Then it goes on to say that the bid was submitted by British zoologist Peter Daszak of EcoHealth Alliance, the organization that funded, with Dr. Anthony Fauci, gain-of-function research on behalf of the US government at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And again, as I said earlier, Daszak was made kingmaker by Facebook fact-checkers to censor, quote, disinformation about the COVID outbreak right at the start of the pandemic back in February 2020. Then it goes on to include team members, Dr. Shi Zhengli, the WIV researcher dubbed Batwoman, as well as US researchers from the University of North Carolina and the United States Geological Survey National Wildlife Health Center. So again, Daszak, this guy, again, was intimately involved. The same guy who back in February 2020 was writing gracious, indebted emails to Dr. Anthony Fauci, thanking him for cutting off the narrative at the source that the Wuhan Institute of Virology that he was funding had anything to do with the outbreak. Meanwhile, they're literally infecting these bats with the coronavirus in these caves in Yunnan, China, or at least applying for the research permit to do so back in 2018. But even DARPA refused to fund the work, saying, quote, it's clear the proposed project led by Peter Daszak could have put local communities at risk, and warned that the team had not properly considered the dangers of enhancing the virus, gain-of-function research, or releasing a vaccine by air. Grant documents show the team also had some concerns about the vaccine program, said they would, quote, conduct educational outreach so that there is a public understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it, particularly because of the practice of bat consumption in the region. Now, again, if you talked about any of this 6 months ago, you were banned off of social media, and they're still doing it to this day. Reclaim the Net reports Michigan candidate for governor Garrett Soledano receives permanent ban from YouTube. Why? Well, he challenged Governor Whitmer's COVID restrictions in Michigan. One too many times now. He's permanently banned forever. Again, more election interference by Google. The Republican gubernatorial candidate in Michigan claims to have been permanently banned from YouTube. Garrett Soledano, an anti-lockdown activist who hopes to be the Republican Party's flag bearer for the Michigan governor race next year, was banned by YouTube yesterday. The notice from the Google-owned platform said his channel was suspended for severe or repeated violations of the community guidelines, but did not specify exactly what they were. He was challenging the lockdown restrictions in Michigan. That's why he was banned. Meanwhile, Facebook and Instagram delete Project Veritas vaccine video for misinformation that could cause harm. What was the misinformation? It was the Health and Human Services official talking about vaccine side effects. Literally, one of their own scientists talk about it, and it's gone, it's banned, it's zapped. Facebook and its subsidiary Instagram have removed a new video. By the way, of course, O'Keefe and Project Veritas were banned off of Twitter many months ago. They're being banned off all these other platforms now. And Instagram's removed the video from the undercover reporting operatives under its misinformation policy. It says, we encourage free expression, but we don't allow false information. What was the false information? Well, they didn't tell Project Veritas, but the video in question featured a whistleblower from the Health and Human Services Department, registered nurse Jody O'Malley, making allegations that the federal government were underreporting the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines. Now, the latest numbers show that there have been at least 15,000 deaths as a result of the vaccine. Of course, that's an underreporting in and of itself. But if you talk about that, if you have a HHS registered nurse talk about it, then you get banned off of Facebook. Because again, the people tasked with running the fact checks on Facebook, on Instagram, were the very same people running the Wuhan Institute of Virology cover-up from the very beginning. The video O'Malley was discussing with another doctor, an ER doctor, alleging that not all patients suffering from heart inflammation after taking the vaccine are being reported. Quote, but now they, the government, are not going to blame the vaccine, Dr. Gonzalez said, of a patient who had suspected myocarditis. Of course, we've seen this in the UK with the teenagers suffering from heart complications, way more so than being hospitalized from the virus, from the COVID virus itself. And yet now we're rolling out jabs to kids as young as 5 years old. The insanity continues. Summit.news will be back. Don't go away. Well, many people have been asking of Australians over the past 6 months, where is their backbone? What happened to the rugged individualist spirit of Crocodile Dundee? Where were the protests? Where was the mass revolt against this disastrous zero COVID policy that the Australian health authorities have been pursuing? Where is the revolt against this lockdown tyranny, to the point where if you go 3 kilometers outside your home, the police send a drone, they track your license plate, they issue fines, they issue arrests. At one point, they were even talking about fitting people who were supposed to be isolating at home with electronic ankle bracelets. We had a story a couple of weeks ago where they're introducing now, I think it's in the state of Victoria, this program where you have to download a government app if you're supposed to be self-isolating. And if the government calls you up within 15 minutes, you have to take a geolocation tagged selfie and send it to the government just to prove where you are. This is beyond Chinese communist style social credit score. This is the next level. And we were asking what the line in the sand would be. Well, we found that line over the past few days because there has been an uprising. We had the yellow vests in France back in late 2018 into 2019, of course, revolting against President Macron, his globalist measures to basically crush the economy. The French farmers were out on the streets. We saw that movement expand to Germany, to the Netherlands. Well, now we're seeing the rise of the orange vest revolution in Australia. Headline out of Breitbart: chaos down under as anti-lockdown protesters clash with riot police in Melbourne. The streets of Melbourne were plunged into chaos once again on Tuesday as anti-lockdown protesters clashed with riot police, forcing police vehicles to retreat as they smashed windows and hurled makeshift missiles. This is the construction workers whose union told them that they would be mandated to take the COVID-19 vaccine or lose their jobs. We have a video about this, and I'm going to talk about the latest when we get back. But here is what is happening in Australia with the rise of the orange vest movement. Here's the clip. Are we witnessing the start of a yellow vest style revolt in Australia? Or more accurately, is this the beginning of the orange vest uprising? The union that represents construction workers mandated that they all get the vaccine or lose their jobs. Suffice to say, they weren't too happy about it. A day after attempting to storm the union building itself, construction workers marched through Melbourne wearing yellow and orange jackets while chanting "F the jab" and "Enough is enough." Another video showed police cars fleeing as they were confronted by demonstrators.
Wow. Fuck, they're throwing shit at the coppers. Look at that. Look at that, they're throwing shit at the coppers. Get him! Whoa!
Protesters reached the Westgate Freeway, blocked traffic in both directions, and then occupied the Westgate Bridge. Despite facing traffic jams, the people stuck in their vehicles appeared to offer support. Authorities and the media have dismissed the protest as a bunch of right-wing extremists and neo-Nazis. Wow, didn't see that one coming. But is this the rallying point that Australians have been crying out for? Facing draconian restrictions and 11 grand fines merely for protesting? Is the yellow or orange jacket the new symbol of resistance, just as it was in France? Does it provide Aussies with a unifying emblem around which they can build solidarity? Melbourne witnessed numerous scenes of extreme police brutality during protests this past weekend, including a 70-year-old woman being pushed to the floor and pepper sprayed in the face by police. Because they really care about public health, such scenes have generated increasing anger, international condemnation, and the realization that Australia is no longer a democratic country. But it does now appear that the yellow and orange vest uprising could be the fork in the road where Aussies finally come together and declare enough is enough. So there you have it, some actual positive news. Yes, positive news, a rare sight on this broadcast. But of course, the reason this is happening is because Australia continues to pursue the most brutal, the most draconian lockdown in the developed world. They had one COVID case, for example, in a town, Alice Springs, which was 800 miles from the nearest city. And they do this time and time again. They put the full town into lockdown. There's no differentiation whatsoever. I was just looking through the headlines that we've had about Australia over the past 6 months. Lockdown Australians' alcohol intake monitored and restricted by the state. The people in the public housing, the apartments, under lockdown again for months and months on end. The only way that they could try and get through it, we know, by the way, that suicides have drastically increased throughout Australia as a result of lockdown. Some people trying to get through it by basically drinking their way through it. But even the government came along and said, no, you can't do that, because they really care about your health, even as untold numbers of them are committing suicide. The government literally intercepted parcels that family members were sending to these people in social housing in these apartments, searching it for alcohol and confiscating the booze. We had top health officials in Australia come out and basically tell the unvaccinated that they'll remain under lockdown restrictions forever, which is another reason why you're seeing this orange vest revolt. We have another headline. Woman in quarantine harassed by cops for removing face masks to drink tea. In these self-isolation gulags, they literally patrol these prisons that they've kept Australians in who are supposed to be self-isolating. If they remove their masks for a second to drink their tea, the cops swoop on them. Meanwhile, Australian police violate lockdown rules to host LGBT office party, because obviously that's more important. So the actual officials enforcing this brutal lockdown, once again, as in America with the Emmy Hollywood elite, the rules don't apply to them. We had Australian police pepper spray children for not wearing face masks. You've seen numerous people tackled in the street. We had a story out of Brisbane about a month ago where an old guy was jogging in a park, exercising. You're not supposed to wear a face mask while you're doing hardcore exercise. You could literally choke to death. They tackled him, dragged him to the ground, had a cardiac arrest. We've had authorities saying they won't hesitate to go door to door. We've had Australian health officials telling grandparents don't go anywhere near your grandkids. And remember, these orange vests who are out on the streets now in Melbourne going up against the police, going up against the union that's mandating them to get this jab, they face fines of $11,000 merely for engaging in any form of protest. That's how bad it's become. In fact, even posting about an anti-lockdown protest online can not only get you a massive fine, it can get you a home visit from the police. We saw that with the pregnant woman who was arrested, handcuffed in front of her children, and that was 6 months ago. It's only gotten worse since. Of course, Dr. Kerry Chant, the New South Wales public health official, coming out and saying, don't talk to your friends, don't talk to your neighbours, don't post about it online, don't complain about it. Well, they're not only complaining about it, they're out en masse on the streets, rebelling. It's a new rise of a new movement, the Orange Vest movement, and it's fantastic to see.